So today I am really grateful to welcome my friend Olivia Culpo to BDA Baby. We are going to talk about her endometriosis journey. She has been so incredibly open about being diagnosed with it and also her journey to even getting diagnosed with endometriosis, which involved a lot of doctor's appointments telling her that, she was totally fine. She didn't have endometriosis. So we're going to talk about the importance of knowing your body, being an advocate for yourself, and also just her overall endometriosis journey and getting to an amazing place that she's at today. And really excited to talk to her. I do want to talk about, I've been doing like a deep dive in everything that you've been doing as far as advocacy work for endometriosis, which I think is incredible. I remember years ago when you first started to be open about it on social media, which was, I feel like, at a time when people weren't talking as openly about endometriosis, but it seemed like people were being diagnosed with it left and right. And then we jump to now when there's a lot more information about it, but still not enough to support people in their journeys with being diagnosed at the right time or getting the support that they need. So why don't we just go back to the beginning and talk about why you even chose to be open about something that's not glamorous or sexy, but obviously very important to you?
That's such a good question. And it is exactly because of that. It is not sexy, it is not glamorous. And the symptoms that I was having from a very young age were so embarrassing to me that I was afraid to talk to my parents about them. I was afraid to talk to my doctors about them. I genuinely felt embarrassed about my reproductive system not working appropriately or correctly, and my symptoms were strange. I mean, endometriosis, as many people don't know, actually can affect so many different organs. Like, it can be in your liver, your appendix, your rectum, your bowels, it's not only your front pelvic region, it's not only your ovaries. So your symptoms can be really different wherever you have it. So I was really embarrassed, and I felt this once I did get the help once I started, getting more comfortable talking about it, I felt like I needed to be honest so that other people could feel less alone, so that they're not embarrassed. And it's a really weird, shameful feeling, but that's the word. You feel shame. It's very weird just talking about your period. So like now I'm at a phase where I say period. Like, I want to change that. I want people to feel comfortable. I don't want people to feel isolated in their experience, their pain, their shame. And that was the way that I thought I could help.
But I mean, you talk also a lot about the fact that like you had these painful periods. You also were in what sounds like debilitating pain a lot of the time, with just feeling, barreled over with pain. Endometriosis also has such a wide swing with people who have mild cases of it to extreme cases of it. And that you went to doctors who kind of dismissed your pain, which is something that I feel like as women, we talk more about now, which is, medical gaslighting or not being with a doctor that you feel supports you or hears you. What was your experience like with that, with finding a doctor that actually listened to your pain, validated your pain, and just the importance of that when it comes to this?
I know. It was so traumatizing. And I think about how privileged I am, the life that I live, the access that I have to people. And I was continuously told that I was made to feel that I was overreacting because there was no diagnosis. I was told, oh, just take Advil before, or I'm sorry, I can't give you an ultrasound today because you're bleeding too heavily and it's not sanitary. Like the craziest things, like trying to just get me on birth control right away when like something was severely wrong with me. I could feel it because the pain was so bad. I really couldn't function. And I had nobody to support me. It was very scary because I was like, this is like, I'm going to die. Like, I thought I was going to die, which is so dramatic, but the pain is so severe.
No, but it sounds crazy painful
Yeah.
from what you've said. And then not to be able to even like, to feel the shame of not wanting to express that pain and have to like sit with it, I'm sure makes it even worse because you feel like you're going crazy.
Yes, and it's a progressive disease. So like every month it will get worse, and worse because you'll create more lesions. The tissue will grow and grow more in the areas it's not supposed to. So my endometriosis is mostly in my rectum. So like that's a very painful place. We call it butt lightning. And like, that's where I have it. It's very painful. Other people have it in other areas, and that's why some women have it in places they don't even know that they have it. It's wreaking havoc on their body, and then they can never get pregnant. And they get to be 50 years old, they never were able to have children. They go to the right doctor finally, and that doctor tells them that they have stage 5 endometriosis and they've had it their whole life. Like, it doesn't always show up in a way that you can feel. That's why it's such a crazy, that's why we're not involved in the diagnosis process. It's very difficult to diagnose.
So what was your diagnosis process like then? Because, there are so many, especially, young girls or even girls who are in their 20s who've been on birth control for a long time, because it seems like that's a quick fix for a lot of people. And then you get to a place in your life where maybe you want to think about, your fertility or having kids one day, and then you go off of birth control, you have very painful periods, and you kind of go from doctor to doctor before you're eventually diagnosed with, if it's PCOS, if it's endometriosis, whatever it is. But what was your diagnosis process like when you eventually were diagnosed?
Right. So that's where the whole endometriosis community comes in for me. And I feel the need to pay it forward what I was, the support that I received. So I started out by Googling my symptoms, because I was going to doctors. They were all telling me that I was fine. They were all making me feel like I was overreacting, but I was in agony. So I would be in the bath. That's the place I lived, in the bath. Just like, Googling everything, YouTube, Reddit, Instagram, Facebook. And I found the most phenomenal resources that I was so grateful to have stumbled upon, and people who had the same symptoms as me. It's like, okay, I know what this is. It has to be called endometriosis. So then from there, I started Googling doctors who specialize in endometriosis. That's where I came across Dr. Alia Badi in LA. She finally gave me an ultrasound, and my symptoms, it's just such a complicated thing to diagnose. But basically, I had a chocolate cyst, which is a blood-filled cyst on one of my ovaries. So that's called an endometrioma. So I was actually fortunate in a way, because part of my endometriosis did show up on an ultrasound. But a lot of these women with these debilitating symptoms, they'll go to the doctors, they'll go up with the ultrasound, they don't see anything, because for the most part, endometriosis is not able to show up. It's not always in a cyst form, so it's not always going to show up in an ultrasound. The only way to absolutely diagnose this is through laparoscopic surgery, which is when they cut open, go in, scrape out the tissue, then do a pathology test, and finally find, like, okay, this is endometrial tissue. So it's complicated. That's why it's confusing for people, and that's why we are where we are with the disease.
It's also crazy that that's the only way that you can really determine whether or not you have endometriosis, is like a full surgery. It's not so simple as like a blood test or an ultrasound that can show you something, or like a list of symptoms, right?
Yeah, it's really not. So oftentimes the doctors that I've become really close with through my advocacy, oftentimes it's a symptom-based diagnosis. And then you have to go under, they go in. I mean, I bet you the statistics are like 80% of the time they find that, or honestly, like probably 95% of the time, they find that this person who was, mentioning these particular symptoms has endometriosis. They go in, they find it, and then from there, it's suppression. It's taking it out and then suppressing the hormones. So like, you really do have to take out all the lesions, and then you have to go on birth control, because that's the only way to stop the tissue from growing, like AKA your uterine lining. It's like that tissue that's supposed to just be in your uterine lining, when it grows, when you're about to get your period, it's growing outside of the uterine lining. It's growing outside of the uterus. So that's why you have to go on birth control, which also sucks, because it's not natural.
I mean, I think, there are so many developments that we've made in modern science to be able to, diagnose things or to treat different things. But it seems just like the choice of being put out and doing the surgery is such a big one, because it's, for people who have very busy lives, which you do, it requires downtime. It requires, being put out. It's like a whole thing. But you chose to be really open about your surgery. Like, I remember when you were posting things about your surgery, I was like, wow, this is so different from what you've posted in the past, and at the same time clearly has purpose and meaning for you to be posting something that's, you know, showing you that, you know, after surgery, or that you're showing what that experience is like, and the fact that it's really painful and non-glamorous and not, you know, perfect all the time. What was that experience like for you when you were talking about it? Because since then you've, you know, you speak at endometriosis functions. It's become a real passion of yours to be able to be an open advocate for endometriosis.
I think at the beginning I was definitely scared to be honest and vulnerable. I mean, even like saying like I had like it's just it's still uncomfortable, but it's I feel so blessed to be in a position to help other people. I wouldn't be where I am without the help and vulnerability of the women before me. Truly, truly, I would not have been able to advocate for myself. I wouldn't have known what was happening in my body. It would have taken me way longer to get the diagnosis that I got, even though it still took over 10 years. But I feel like once I started with, you know, once I started being more vulnerable, the stories from women, I mean, on a daily basis almost, I would say, I get a DM from a woman saying that I helped them get their diagnosis, or I gave them the courage to fight back with their doctor or find a better doctor, you know, just like not take no for an answer. Because a lot of the times you are dealing with medical professionals who they're maybe just not that maybe they're not experienced in endometriosis. You know, it just takes a particular type of doctor. At least for me, it did. So I feel like it was really easy after a little bit of time to see like, okay, this is really important. I'm saving these women's lives, and I have to do this.
When you got your exact terminology from Dr. A about, okay, this is what you have, this is endometriosis, was there an instant feeling that you had of like, oh my God, this is going to be terrible, or oh my God, what does that mean? Or did you feel like validated with finally being assigned something?
I was so devastated because at that point, okay, she tells me I have a huge endometrioma on my ovary. That's where all of your eggs are. That's a very important part of the woman's body. You want to have babies. I mean, I knew for at that point years, but in the months leading up to that, I was in so much agony because, like I said before, it gets worse and worse and worse. Like I knew something was so wrong with my body, and all I could think about in that moment that she told me about my diagnosis is I might not be able to have kids. And like my whole, like I could cry about it even thinking about it now. Like it's just, you're so scared. And I also feel I'm also still angry. Like I'm still angry about how long it took for me to get my diagnosis, although I'm blessed that I got it enough time and I do have a good egg count. Like my egg count could be so much bigger if I had caught that endometrioma earlier and I didn't have to get that part of my ovary taken off. Like I'm angry. I'm so angry, and I'm not only angry for myself, I'm angry for the women before me and the women with me right now who are suffering, and the women who are 50 years old now who suffered their whole lives, were unable to have kids and never got the diagnosis. Like I'm so mad and I want to help.
I mean, I think it for a lot of people, that kind of anger is what sends them into the action that you are doing now, which is like talking about something that's so important to you, and being able to hear that diagnosis of, okay, you have endometriosis. Was there something that, you know, comforted you in that time, or did your doctor walk you through that? Or because there are so many people who either are dealing with pain right now and want to know, do I have endometriosis? Or women who've been diagnosed with endometriosis who are like, oh my gosh, the same thing. I'm never going to be able to have kids. What does that mean for my future? But, you know, as you said, you've taken steps since then to know that you have a good egg count, that you have that ability in your future. But was there anything that kind of brought you some calm or brought you some comfort in that time of first being diagnosed?
Definitely, and that's such a good question because I would love to help in any way. If anyone's listening who has endometriosis or is in that really scary time, so the first thing you have to do is test your AMH, which will give you your egg count. It's a 1 to 10 scale, and anything above 1 is like 1 to 4 is really great. So anything over 4 is PCOS. But so that's the first step, and knowing that I was in a good range. Like, oh my God, I was so happy. I was like jumping for joy. So that's the first thing that I would recommend someone do. And then Outside of that, get a really great doctor, and it doesn't have to be somebody who doesn't take insurance. It doesn't have to be a private doctor. Just Google. There are doctors who their expertise is endometriosis. They are out there. They are few and far between. I'm going to be honest, but that's why there's so many great resources. Like on Facebook, there's Nancy's Nook. On Reddit, there's so many threads about great experiences with doctors and patients with their endometriosis. Instagram, ask your followers, ask your friends. And then third on that note is just support, like having somebody that you can talk to, whether it's somebody online or your friend or one of your parents or your significant other. Like, I really do feel like it's so isolating and scary, but being able to have that type of support really does lighten the load, and you need it because it's scary. Like, you want, as a woman, I can't speak for everybody, but personally, it's like the idea of your ability of having kids being taken away from you. I really can't imagine anything scarier than that. I don't know what my purpose would be, but not everybody feels that way. But for me, I needed support.
And who did you look at for support, or where did you find your support?
Even just being able to like cry to my mom, that was so nice. I needed to let that out, I needed to let that out. And it's like we were saying before, it's not always comfortable talking about your period. It's not comfortable talking about your private parts. Like, it's just not. So, once I did, I felt a huge relief, and I hope that other people listening can also experience that if they are feeling shameful. And if they're not, I commend you and I love you for that. And like, go you. I need to be more like you. But I was a little bit embarrassed, and my fiance too was great with everything. He was always great with periods. Like, his mom is a very big personality. I don't know if you've seen her on my Instagram, but she's a huge personality. She also had painful periods, so he grew up with her being very vocal about it. And it's like, when she had her period, everybody had to watch out. Like, they needed to be nice to her because she was in pain. Like, so he gets it. Yeah. It doesn't make him feel weird, and I'm so happy about that, because some guys are a little annoying about things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also, it depends also how like people have grown up. Like, is that something that you're comfortable talking about? And it's great that, that he was raised in an environment that allows you to feel comfortable and supported talking about it. We did an interview yesterday where we talked about fertility struggles, and then I've done interviews in the past where we've talked about different things like breastfeeding challenges or PCOS, and there's kind of this instant feeling that, or even miscarriages, or anything with your body as a woman, where you kind of get this instant feeling of panic and shame when it comes to your body not working the way that you thought your body should work, or it affecting the way that you thought maybe you would have kids in the future, or that you would function, or the ease in which you would have a family. Did you feel that with being diagnosed with endometriosis, or is that something that you feel at all when it comes to like how your body functions?
Yes, you just said that so perfectly. It is this weird guilt and shame, and I think you nailed it. It's just that you think you feel like your body is supposed to be working in a certain way, and when it doesn't, you're like, oh no, I'm defected. I'm not, this isn't what I was supposed to be, in a way. And then when it's around something so intimate as your private part, I mean, it's called a private part for a reason. Like, it sounds weird. It's like I'm talking to my 3-year-old niece, but like, I don't know, it is a matter of how you were raised. Like, when I was growing up, my mom didn't even tell me that I was going to get a period or how to use a tampon. And her mom didn't either. I can't blame her for that. But there was this weird energy around it, and there still is, for that matter. And that's why, I think we all have a responsibility to create this comfortable environment so that we can really get these things sorted, and that so people don't feel alone.
When you mentioned that your fiance is really supportive in that dynamic, and obviously that's a tribute to his mom on how he was raised to be open about that. For people who are nervous about their relationships being impacted by even the news of like, I have endometriosis, not knowing what that means for their future, do you have any thought about that, or any advice on how to communicate about that?
Yes, I think the first step is creating your relationship with the topic. Like it begins inside of yourself. Like get comfortable with it on your own. And I think once you get there, and it might take the support of other friends and family, like, get comfortable talking about it, ease your way in, and then eventually when you're comfortable, if you're comfortable, and the other person will be comfortable. And at that point, you'll be so comfortable about it yourself that it doesn't really matter how they're going to react, but they will react. Like, we have the ability to make situations weird or comfortable, honestly. Like, we really do hold the power in that, the power of the dynamic of a conversation. So I feel like it starts with you. Get comfortable in yourself, and then who cares what anybody else thinks? And by the way, if your partner isn't going to if your partner is being weird about these type of conversations, it's a bad partner. Ditch that person immediately. Like it's just
Yeah.
not even an
It's
option.
true.
That's their problem. That's
It's
not your problem.
Yeah. I mean, it is so true because then if you also I'll tell you, if you think about the conversations that then you have like with childbirth or even like afterwards, like all the conversations that you have that are not glamorous ones moving forward, like that, if that's something that's going to cause a problem early on, I mean,
Run.
it's
Yeah, that's just not it.
run away.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Oh, you
Um,
don't want to
you
procreate, you don't want
mentioned
to create life in the world. Like what's more beautiful than that? No, we cannot tame ourselves. That's just so stupid. We need to rewrite the whole script.
I mean, it's true. And I know that you come from a big family and your husband or your soon to be husband does too. And that you also mentioned this idea of wanting to have kids someday in the future. Does Dr. A talk to you about like what that is, what that means for you when it comes to when you want to have a baby, when you want to get pregnant? Because that's something that I think people who are diagnosed with endometriosis think like, is that off the table for me? What does that mean for me moving forward? Is that something that you've thought about yet?
Definitely, and I know it's sad because for some endometriosis patients, it is off the table. Having kids is not on the table anymore. It's so sad, which is why we need to advocate for people. But I I have talked to her about it, and she feels really good about it. I feel really good about it. I'm so excited to have kids. There was a time that I was worried enough to start the egg freezing process, all of that, and then I didn't end up doing that because my wedding is in July, and if I have a hard time, I'm just going to freeze my eggs then. Um, yeah, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you been open? Did you do egg freezing? If you don't mind me asking, or anything?
Oh, no, no, no. I don't mind you asking at all. I'm an
Yeah.
open book. I did not do egg freezing, but I've had so many friends who did do it. Most of them who were, turned 30 didn't really know when they wanted to have kids or, started getting older and wanting to just like have that as something that they could have as an option. Um, and I think that it's amazing that people can do it. And since you mentioned you're getting married, we were talking about this yesterday in our interview. It's a lot on the woman's body. Like it's a whole process. It's a
Yeah.
lot for women emotionally, mentally, physically. It's not something that's just like, for men, they can go into a room and just do
Yeah.
their business and be done. Like for women, it's a totally different ball game. So,
Right. And
it's a bigger choice.
totally. And I have friends who say great things about it, have great things to say about it, and then I have friends who don't, who did not have a good experience, who have things afterwards that they're like, okay, maybe this wouldn't have happened if I hadn't taken all of those hormones. They're just a little. You'll never really know for
Oh,
sure
yeah.
what the effect of those hormones on you as an individual, and it's fairly new in the medical field. I mean, not super new, but there's definitely risk involved. And I think natural as you can be is the way to go. And then if all else fails, I mean, I would do anything.
I mean, I think that like the fact that your doctor also feels good about it as far as like your ability to get pregnant and have that be an option, because there are so many people who I think hear this diagnosis and then think like that's just not on the table for me.
Right.
which for some, of course, it's more complicated and challenging. But, and I also think, listen, at the end of the day, the beautiful thing is there are so many avenues to parenthood that I think is incredible. Um, and I think the biggest blessing and takeaway that I have gotten from all of the openness that you have shared is find a doctor who listens to you and pays attention to you and makes you feel seen and not crazy. And that is such a big topic that's, I feel like, in all aspects of women's health. But when it comes to reproductive health, this is such a space that is so important to women. And feeling heard or seen or not dismissed in your doctor's appointments is huge.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's where you have to do your own research, to be completely honest with you. Otherwise, or referrals are a great idea, but Google, Reddit, YouTube, Instagram, ask your friends, ask your followers on Instagram, even if you have like 100, even if you have to fly to go to your doctor, which obviously that's a privilege. But when we're talking about something as important as having kids, like, you do need to get the answers that you want, and not every doctor is going to be great. I mean, I'm just thinking about people who might not live in an area where there are good doctors. I don't know, just for an example. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I just think don't give up is really what it comes down to. No matter what your health issue is, you do have to advocate for yourself, and you do have to do your own research, and then from there you can figure out the right person to support you. But I totally agree, it's definitely a very touchy subject, especially if you're going to ask, like, you can't go to your doctor and be like, I think that you're wrong, but just like, quietly think it, go home, and then do your research. You have to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And even, when it comes to kids and like the importance of wanting to have kids, of course, that's a huge driving factor for everybody. But also it's like this idea that I feel like you've talked about, which is like a feeling that you're going crazy because people are telling you like, there's nothing wrong with you. So I don't know like why you're in so much pain or why you're
Yeah.
complaining. And it's, I even have felt that, and I know you're some of you're around like nieces and nephews and your friends who've had kids and your family members, but it's kind of like that even sometimes in pregnancy and postpartum. It's like you as a woman, you kind of grow up with this idea like I'm supposed to have painful periods. I'm supposed to be in pain after I have a baby. I'm supposed to feel this. I'm not supposed to feel good. So you kind of like dismiss a lot of it. And I think for you, especially like having gone to so many different doctors, this idea of being dismissed with your pain is crazy making for
Oh,
you.
yes. You start to think like, okay, am I going crazy? Am I the problem? So when you do finally
Yeah.
get somebody that believes you and validates you and saves you, you're so appreciative. And that's kind of why you like even what you're doing with everything that you have going on with this amazing podcast. It's so important. It's the least I feel like I can do because of the answers I received. I wouldn't have been able to get the answers I needed if others weren't so vulnerable. So I feel the most responsibility to do the same.
When you go and you speak at things like these different organizations who are focused on endometriosis and you put yourself out there to talk to people and you share on social media your journey, what's it been like to communicate with people who come up to you and say like, thank you for sharing this, or I see myself in your journey? What has that been like? Because it's not necessarily comfortable all the time to share those things. Like it's a touchy subject, it's a private subject, yet you choose to be open about it with the goal of helping other people and help people feel less alone in their journey. But I'm sure also seeing people in real life and having them talk to you might be different.
It's honestly so amazing. I'm so grateful that I've been able to help in any way that I possibly can. And it's honestly it's all positive. It's so nice getting to know people, whether it's over DM or in person. Just thank you so much for what you did for my daughter. She was suffering for so long. Or thank you so much. I finally got my diagnosis because of you. I changed doctors. Or I'm going in for my laparoscopic surgery because of you. I'm so excited to start my life over again. Or, I honestly, I feel so lucky. And even just the resources that I have, like Dr. Alia Body, my other doctor who actually physically did my surgery, her name's Dr. Villasegar. She's in North Carolina. I love this woman so much. She's truly saved my life. That's who did my surgery, just for anybody listening. Dr. Villasegar, she's the freaking best ever. I just sent two friends to her recently, and their lives are completely changed. They're like, thank you for saving my life. That's really what it feels like for them. And it's like, I would do anything to make somebody, I would do anything to help these people. We have to do it for the sake of all of us. I mean, it's just so important. And I'm always an open book. I love everybody's DMs. Anybody listening, if they want to ask me any questions, I try to answer as much as I can. I have a highlight on Instagram about, some questions in the past, but yeah, it's all good.
That's so amazing. It's such a gift also that you use your platform to be able to amplify something like this, especially in the women's health space, because it's true, we're so far from perfect when it comes to health and especially women's health, and being able to be such a outspoken advocate with your journey, sharing your journey, and choosing to also interact with people to help others is just such a beautiful gift that you're putting out there into the universe and into the world. And I'm so grateful because I've learned so much about endometriosis through your journey, but also being able to advise any of my friends who might be experiencing something. It's really awesome that you're using your time and your energy to do that, and knowing that it helps so many people just must make you feel great. And thank you so much for even taking the time to do this, because I know that you have so much going on, but talking about this is so important. And also just like the idea that even like a young girl would listen to you talk about the fact that you have had painful periods and be like, oh my God, she had a painful period. And
Yeah.
it's incredible. So
Oh,
congratulations.
thank you so much. No, I feel for those people listening. I remember when I first, not to throw anybody under the bus, I'm going to keep it vague, but when I was first diagnosed too, we know there are people that we, mutual friends, whatever, people in our industry though, who
Yeah.
I knew had endometriosis. And I asked one of our mutual friends, like, can you please have her text me? Like, I'm in so much pain. Like, I'd love to know what worked for her. And like, that person just never reached out to me. And I could never imagine doing that. Like, anybody that I know, especially a friend of a friend of a friend, like, I will literally
Yeah.
I will take you to your appointment, like anything to help somebody. So that's another reason why I'm really passionate about it, because not everybody is, like, I guess, nice. I don't know. And not everybody's a good person.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's true. Not everyone is nice,
Yeah.
especially about something that can be
True.
personal.
Yeah.
Um,
That's true.
like I think some people are uncomfortable talking about
Yeah.
it, but the idea that you're, so interested in helping other people, it's so clear with everything that you put out there. So, job well done with being an advocate for endometriosis, because you're doing a great job with it. So, and I'm glad that you also have relief with it, that we've like made strides since you being diagnosed, that like you feel like you're in a good place with it.
Yes, definitely. Absolutely. I feel very, very lucky. So hopefully someone listening will have the same experience through this. That's my hope. So thank you
God
for your
willing.
platform and
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Thanks, Olivia. Thanks, Olivia. Thank you so much to Olivia Culpo for joining us today to talk all things endometriosis. She is such an amazing advocate and voice in this space, and I'm so grateful that she's chosen to be so open with her journey. It's not a glamorous or sexy topic to talk about, and she is doing just such incredible work sharing her journey, and also allowing people to see themselves in her journey and feel less alone in their journey. So I'm so grateful she took the time. I think she's incredible. She's doing amazing, amazing advocacy work for endometriosis, and I'm grateful for her.